Week 0 is here, and two powerhouse programs in the Big 12 that used to be among the doormats of college football, perhaps staking an early claim to a inside track on its way to the college football playoff. Plus, we'll look ahead to Notre Dame and also talk a little bit about the quarterback races and the sanctions finally handed down to Michigan. This is the College Game Day podcast. Rece Davis and Dan Wetzel here, along with Ryan McGee, as Pete Thamel wraps up his paternity leave. Pete will be back. Pete actually is going to be back for our Week 0 college football countdown show. I don't think it's technically called College Game Day, leading in to Iowa State and Kansas State on Saturday morning from Dublin. Guys, I was in Dublin last year for the Florida State-Georgia Tech game. To say that the Irish people are deeply immersed in the nuance of college football would not be accurate. But the one thing that they do embrace is the unbridled passion that fans have for the teams. And the one thing that I'm eagerly awaiting a report on, Dan, I'm sure both of you guys remember the famous trip to the Liberty Bowl that Iowa State took, where they drank apparently all of the Busch Light in the city. And that sounds hyperbolic, except it wasn't. Like, the bars were out. There were no more. There was no more in the stadium. There's a lot of Guinness in Ireland for those Cyclones, and perhaps with some help from the Wildcats to try to drain the Guinness before they tee it up at Avila Stadium.
Well, as a proclaimed Busch Light enthusiast, I can tell you Iowa State's performance at that Liberty Bowl is really should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Brings a tear to our eye. I've been saying this. I love this matchup in Ireland. The idea of these two over-the-top, passionate fan bases based on historic performance. Now, they're really good right now. Both teams are ranked, right? But historically, these are not. There's been some dry spells. Let's put it that way. There's droughts sometimes hit agricultural America.
There are two of the 10 losingest programs in the history of the sport, and as recently as 30 years ago, you could easily 33 years ago, when Bill Snyder arrived, you could easily make the argument Kansas State was the losingest and the worst program in the history of the sport, and Iowa State was right there with them at that time. And now look at them.
And here they are. They're going to be debating who's got the better quarterback, who's going to win the Big 12, who's got the better coach, Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman, which yields more per acre, wheat or corn. That's going to be a big debate in the Dublin bars this weekend. It's all there. It's all coming. Farmageddon deserves a turn in the national spotlight. 109th consecutive meeting between these two schools. It's longer than the Iron Bowl. It's longer than Texas, Oklahoma. It's longer than a lot of them. And I think it's the fourth longest streak. It's getting its turn. It's a great way to kick off the season because it's a real game. It matters. There's conference implications. There's national college football playoff implications. And it's two really strong, really good programs with really passionate fans who get their moment in the sun, albeit in Dublin. Farm-O-Geddon, they're calling it. And they're not in the SEC or the Big Ten. It's all here. I love it. I couldn't be more excited.
Well, and what's the one thing they have more than Guinness in Ireland are farmers, right? And that's why it fits. I mean, those are our people, right? That's all they do is farm. That's all there is to do is farm and drink Guinness. And so, no, it's great. My favorite thing when we got satellite radio and we could start listening to the local radio broadcasts of every school. Like, one of my favorite things was listening to Kansas State, and the commercial breaks are the best because it's literally nothing but ads for combines. That's all it is. Combines and fertilizer. And so, and the same when you go, to Ames. So I'm excited about it. I've not had the chance to experience it. I was so jealous a year ago. That was in the 4K UHD era. That was the greenest football game, Rece, I've ever seen. Is the game where you guys were there a year ago, from the field to the surroundings to the teams. So I'm excited about it. And yeah, I'm excited to Dan's point. The fact that the nation's going to be introduced to this game, because regionally, everyone knows what this game is. Nationally, people don't get it. And so I'm excited for that, one. And two, I'm ready to get going. And it's but it is impossible, isn't it, Rece, to explain to people now, like of a certain age, how awful Kansas State was. I always say Kansas State and Oregon. It's hard to explain to people how terrible they were because now they both win 10 games a year.
It it's probably, I still think that Kansas State's turnaround under Bill Snyder, an eyelash away from playing for a national championship in 1998. That's probably the biggest turnaround and the best reclamation project in the history of college football. Iowa State would occasionally, sneak up, maybe win 5 or 6, but they would have long losing streaks and long droughts too. I think the thing that is remarkable to me about Iowa State is that Matt Campbell has been able to maintain. I guess I'm free to tell this story now. You guys remember when Illinois went to the Sugar Bowl years and years ago? I should know the year off the top of my head, but early 2000s. They have a good season. They go to the Sugar Bowl. Afterwards, at the East West Shrine Bowl, Mark May and I were working it, and we were talking with Ron Turner, and we sort of in a quiet moment said, "Hey, you're going to be able to springboard this out of here." And he goes, "No, I think I could sustain it here." And Ron's a good coach now. I mean, I think he was a good coach, and he couldn't sustain it at Illinois. Now, I don't mean to make Illinois fans mad. Brett Bielema may very well sustain things there. But the job that Matt Campbell has been able to do when he, like so many coaches in the past, seemingly missed his window by his own choosing, in many cases, not to go to the NFL, not to take a bigger college job. There were times when his name was popping up for Notre Dame, for Michigan, and maybe someday that's in the cards if he chooses to do so. But in the meantime, he's been able to keep it going and maintain. And he talked about in the offseason about guys not taking bigger paydays in order to stay in Ames and to try to do again what they did last year, and that's get very close to the college football playoff. Now, I know Arizona State put a whipping on them in the Big 12 championship game, but they were a game away. For whatever you want to say about how the game went, they were that close to making the playoff. Kansas State, I think, believes if it is not in that position this year, that the season would be somewhat disappointing. So the ability to sustain, and for Chris Kleiman to come into Kansas State and win after it seemed for a while, Bill Snyder left and Kansas State immediately started taking a nosedive. And then Snyder pulls it back up a bit, and now Kleiman's been able to build on that. A couple of really remarkable organizational jobs. All of these guys, I say this a lot, all of these guys that have these jobs as head coaches. I know fans like to get on the various social media platforms and say this guy doesn't know what he's doing or he can't coach and blah, blah, blah. They all know ball. All of them, even the one that you want fired, knows ball. To know ball and to understand where you are and to sustain winning at a place where it's extraordinarily difficult to win historically is really remarkable. So we got a couple of high-level coaches, a couple of high-level quarterbacks. There are guys to be replaced for sure. The receivers, Noel and Higgins for Iowa State, have to be replaced this year, but they've got a bevy of running backs coming back. How do you see the game, Ryan? How do you see the game playing out?
Well, it's interesting because I think that this quarterback debate that you're talking about, and I want to revisit something you just said too about the coaches, because I go back to both these guys who I genuinely believe that they would stay in these jobs as long as they'll keep them there. Clearly, that's what Campbell wants to do. And I always go back to a conversation I had at Duke with the great David Cutcliffe, friend of all of us, and that's when he had Duke rolling, and they had just played, in the Peach Bowl on New Year's Eve, and almost upset. I think it was Texas A&M, and I remember Cut saying to me then, he goes, "Listen," he goes, "if I stay here in Durham and I win 9 games a year, and every 2 or 3 years we make a run at New Year's Day, or we make a run at the ACC championship game, just getting to the game," he goes, "they'll put a statue of me out front." And he goes, "They fired me at Ole Miss for doing the exact same thing." And I always go back to that with both these coaches because I really think they're dug in. But no, I like the matchup, and I'm with you. I think that Kansas State probably knows they're in a rebuild. I don't think they had last year was frustrating for them because they felt like they had chances to make a run that they weren't able to solidify. And so this is a chance to get back on track. But I think Iowa State's sneaky, sneaky good. And I think that this is the game that can set the tone. And you guys know this, in this beauty pageant era where we have a playoff committee, these statements that you make in the first couple of weeks, I maintain once we hit October and November, they still matter. It's kind of the anti-LSU rule, right? If you keep losing week one, then that's probably going to hurt you, whether it's one loss or two losses or whatever, when the committee gets together. They'll remember what you do in the first couple of weekends. And that's why I think this is gigantic, particularly for the Cyclones.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The spotlight here, everybody watching. I mean, it'll get a really nice rating. These games always do. It's week 0 is nothing else. And to have a Power 4 conference game with 2 ranked teams is just astounding. A little on Matt Campbell. He's only 45 years old.
Yeah,
this
right.
is his 15th season as a head coach. Did 5 at Toledo, and then 10. This is his 10th year at Iowa State, and so he should still be the hot young coach. He should still be a guy who's being considered, whether he ever wants to leave. His ability, to your point, Rece, to pull out of the down. A lot of coaches get going really well, and then they stay. And then the downslope comes and they can't pull out of it. The 4-8 2022 season, they went 4-8, 1-8 in the Big 12. And it looked like now here we go. And instead 7-6 and then 11-3. And then this team absolutely has potential. Both these teams have potential to win this league and make the playoffs. So that's really, really impressive on what Matt Campbell did. And to your point, I can't say there's no earthly reason Kansas State should even have a program let alone be this good. It is located far from any recruiting base. It's any media market. It is the epitome of what I think makes, and both these teams really makes college football so perfect. We have 136 teams in FBS. They're from 42 states. Big cities, small towns, right? The Little Apple's got a team. The Big Apple doesn't. We've got military academies, religious institutions, private schools, mammoth public schools. And you could have a team in Manhattan, Kansas, and a team in Ames, Iowa. And the Irish going to sit there and say, what is going on? I don't understand any of this stuff. So that is the beauty of this, that both of these two schools, basically through just sheer will and the passion of all those guys buying turbines and things like that, is saying, yeah, we're going to be good and we're going to represent. We're traditional agricultural schools in traditional agricultural states. But so what? We're not afraid of playing teams from Los Angeles or Atlanta or Miami or wherever, or Michigan. We're going to play anyone. And this weekend, this rivalry, which unfortunately is going to stop consecutive in a couple of years because of conference realignment, which is a tragedy, gets to go, and it should be a tremendous game.
Well, and what I love about going to games at both these places, but particularly the Little Apple, particularly Kansas State, is you go to a Kansas State game. And I always say it's kind of like going to a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game. They understand. St. Louis Cardinals crowd will stand up and applaud a solid bunt that moves a runner over. A lot of ballparks won't do that. You go to Kansas State, they lose their minds over a solid midfield, second quarter, third down conversion, right? And that's what. But it is a smart football crowd, and they're very polite, like almost quiet. And when the offense has the ball, I mean, you can shout at somebody across the stadium and they'll hear you because they know to shut up. But it is. I love going to games there. I haven't been there in years, but I had a chance back when I covered races, guys, at the Kansas Speedway. I would always drive to Manhattan. You drive through the town where there's a Wizard of Oz themed town, and then you get to Manhattan to watch a football game.
When you get to Manhattan, you come in on Bill Snyder Family Highway and go beside Bill Snyder Stadium and Bill Snyder, probably Bill Snyder Chevrolet or some such thing. And the whole town's named after. Two things. One,
no, it's even more polite than that, Rece. It's called Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
That's so great.
The whole family. Bring
them all. Bring them all.
No, you got cousin Jimmy. We got Aunt Betty. We got everybody, the whole family. Yeah. That's how polite they are.
Here comes Aunt Betty saying, you see that stadium? That's named after me.
Yeah.
I'm right there in the family.
Have some pie. Exactly.
Couple of things, Ryan. Number one, and we don't have time to spend on this, but I just want to send this as a public service announcement to all baseball managers and coaches. There is no virtue in bunting. There is no reason to ever bunt before the 8th or ninth inning. It diminishes your chances of scoring. Okay, enough of that. But moving on to the other thing, I once lost a rental car in Manhattan, Kansas. Lost it. Well, actually, technically, I lost the keys. We were there for college game day basketball, and Hubert Davis was working with us, and I was sitting on the bus watching games, and that was back when we had a night show and the whole thing. You stay the whole day in a wrap-up show. And Hubert comes in and says, can I borrow your rental car? I want to go back to the hotel and take a nap. I said, sure. And he comes back a couple hours later, and I distinctly, because I would love to blame Hubert for this. I would love to blame Hubert for the lost keys to the rental car. But I distinctly remember him walking into the bus going, thanks, man, tossing me the keys, me catching them. And that's the last I remember seeing of the keys ever. So it gets time to go back. I can't find the keys. We do a hard target search, as Tommy Lee Jones said in The Fugitive. Couldn't find it. Nowhere to be found. So I go back to the airport the next day and just leave the rental car sitting in the middle of a field there in Manhattan. A few days later, I get a call from the rental car company, and I called them and told them what happened. And the lady said, "Are you going to return the keys? And return your car and return the keys?" I said, "I lost the keys." She said, "I know, but are you going to return them?" I said, "Do you understand the concept of what the word lost means?" If I said, had I known where the keys were, I would have gone and retrieved them, driven the car back. And she goes, "But we need the car back." I said, "I totally understand that, and I can't help you with that." And so I guess they sent a flatbed truck and got it or whatever. But
planes, trains, and automobiles here.
I know, yeah. It was like, she was like, "But are you going to return the car?" "Would if I could. Don't have the keys."
Who drove you back? Because you get stranded in Manhattan. You could be there a while. Are you still there?
Yeah. That was back in the day that we are now spoiled beyond measure in terms of being ferried about. Back then we were all on our own. So I probably got in the car with Billis or something. Yeah. I don't really remember.
Were you able to expense the lost key fee? And if so, let us know after HR isn't listening.
I would have to dig through my notes, which don't exist. I would have to make up an answer to tell you. I don't recall.
But in Kansas, like anybody has a flat tire, there's automatically 17 guys that pull up. Yeah. You need help? You need help? You good? You need help? So yeah, I feel fully confident that there were plenty of flatbeds that could grab that rental car and get it back for you.
You look at these two teams in this game. How many players do you think Iowa State took in the portal this year? In an era where programs that aren't at the very top, and even ones that are, just mine the transfer portal and overhaul their rosters. I was just in Chapel Hill this week. They've got more than, in different circumstance, new coach and Bill Belichick and everything, more than 70 guys. Deion Sanders, famously 80-something guys. A lot of different, I think Purdue's 50 some odd guys or even more. Maybe it's more. How many do you think Iowa State had this year?
Well, I'm going to guess a small number based on that lead in. 8. How about that?
That's exactly left, right. That's exactly right.
8?
Oh,
8.
That's unbelievable.
Right. If you get the right number, do you get like $1,000 or something?
Yeah. Three of them were edge rushers because that was something.
They always need an edge rusher. Nobody leaves either. People love it there. It's just, I mean, it's my, and the thing is, like, this is the Cyhawk game in a couple of weeks will be equally endearing to me. No, that needs this is the best name. Farmageddon. This is a great name.
Yeah.
Cyhawk, not a good name. We need to do better on that one. But it's just boring. Need a better name. That could be Farmageddon. If this one has to go away because of Big 12 scheduling, maybe we could have Farmageddon 2. But yeah, no, people, these are real programs. That's it. And Kleiman on the other side has done a really good job keeping as many of the Kansas players as he possibly can. We'll see if KU's big investment in football changes some of that. But both of these guys punching above their weight. But eventually, you put enough into a program, and why not? Nebraska ruled the roost for a long time. Why can't schools like this?
Yeah, it is interesting, too, because as much as recruiting has changed, and as much as on some level we all mourn the loss of National Signing Day, which every February I'm like, why am I not busy today? But the fundamentally, guys, it's still the same. Your tools are different. What you're able to go out and recruit with is different, or sign with is different. But they still got to play. And how many 5 stars, guys that had the press conference with everybody behind them and all the hats and all that stuff, how many of those guys washed out? A lot. And so with the transfer portal, it's the same thing. And it's really, you always hear those coaches at the mid level like, we're recruiting on need. All right, I got plenty of linemen, but I need edge rushers, I need corners, I need whatever, and that's exactly what's happening here. And it's a compliment, because but it is fascinating. We all three have these conversations with these coaches about, my approach is this because this is who we are, and their approach is that because that's who they are. And the reality is, Iowa State's never going to be Ohio State. They're just not. But they can recruit the way they want to recruit, which is what this portal thing is now. That part fascinates me, because the mechanics of it and the actual part of it, what we're talking about, has changed, but the fundamentals of it, who are you going and getting, and how many can you go get, that hasn't changed at all. It's just the difference is, it's just not signing day. It's it's NIL day.
I really want to see, from a game standpoint, as good as Iowa State has been in recent years on defense. We mentioned they didn't rush the passer. They also didn't stop the run last year, and that is what Kansas State does. And Avery Johnson, dual threat guy. I think Kansas State needs him to take the steps so he can reach the promise. I mean, it might be exaggerating it a little, but not much, but they, didn't mind Will Howard moving on to Ohio State. Worked out for both parties. They gave Avery Johnson a chance to develop, and he broke the school record for touchdowns in a season. Certainly worked out for Will Howard going to Ohio State. Last year, Kansas State was second in the nation in yards per carry, better than 6 yards per carry. But they had 3 losses in November where they couldn't move the ball, averaged about 16 points per game. So that needs to be stepped up a little bit. Iowa State had all kinds of problems stopping the run. If they can't stop the run against Kansas State on Saturday, they're not going to win. And I know that's an adage as old as football, but when you start looking at the ranks that Iowa State had defensively last year in rush defense, not very good. They were averaged over 5 yards per carry. That was 126th in the nation. They gave up big runs. They were 125th in runs of 10 yards or longer, gave up 81 of those babies. Kansas State has some guys who can move, not just Johnson. Now they're having some new faces in the backfield, having to replace sort of their stalwart guy last year in DJ Giddens, but they've got Dylan Edwards, the transfer from Colorado, who was there last year and was productive at times. They've added a couple of guys in the portal there. And with Kleiman, they're going to try to run. They don't have an experienced offensive line at Kansas State, but they weren't that experienced last year. And they wound up putting together a good offensive line. And perhaps the guy, and I'm going to look at the depth chart right now to see how close he's going to be to getting into the game. But there's a great name on the Kansas State defense. I'm going to be very sad. I don't see him on the depth chart. This could be no, there he is. Okay, there he is. I was like, man, is he not starting this year? How about Cody Stufflebean? That's a great name.
Defensive name. Got to play defense. Got to play defense.
Yeah, defensive lineman. Yeah. So yeah. I was worried that he
was not going to be a wide receiver.
Yeah. No. Certain guys you got to have different spots, right? It's like Squirrel White. Got to be a slot kind of receiver, right? Got to be edgy. Yeah, you got to fit your name. How amazing how that happens.
Who do you guys think wins the game?
Go ahead, Ryan. You want to? I'll go. I think I.
No, I know. I know what our rotation was here. No, I will.
We don't have one. We're just talking. Planning. Are there people listening still? I don't know.
No. I keep going back to Iowa State. It feels like this is they have these cyclical years. Cyclones do, but it feels like they've got a run in them. And I'm not just saying that because I have a Johnny Majors helmet back here. And Johnny, you talking about Ames? No one loved Ames, Iowa more than Johnny Majors.
No one loves Johnny Majors more than you.
Yeah, it's the truth. But Coach Majors would talk about Ames, Iowa all the time. Ryan McGee, Ames, Iowa. He started talking about it. I've been in a lot of places. He goes, if they could afford me, I'd have stayed.
Didn't love it that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Pitt had more money.
Yeah, no, it happens. Yeah, no, it's a great place. Look, I'm gonna go with Iowa State. I think it's gonna be a really good game. They usually are. I think the series is like 50 54 50 and 1 or something. I mean, something very close, whatever the numbers come. Last year's game was close. I think this could be a big moment for Rocco Becht, and this is his third year as a starter, which is rare. Talk a little about what you said with Campbell building and what these programs are about. The guy threw 3,500 yards, had 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's a terrific player, can run, all the different things he can do. And he didn't leave, right? He hasn't left either of these years. Same with Avery Johnson at Kansas State. Like, they have options to go somewhere, and they're staying. They'll people are getting big money to go wherever you got to go. And I'm not saying they aren't getting some money to stay, but there's a loyalty factor. And so I think this could be a really good season for Rocco. And I'm going to give Iowa State the edge in this early one. But I was watching some of the press conferences, and like Matt Campbell said, I don't know what, in a first game, you never know what a team is going to do. And Kleiman's the kind of coach that will change things up. He's not, he's a small college coach, and those guys can coach with whatever they've got, they work with. This isn't a one menu chef. This is how they could change some different things. They got a new offensive coordinator. It's hard to know, but I'm going to give Iowa State the nod on this one.
Yeah, Matt Wells, the offensive coordinator at Kansas State, now full-time. He was there on staff last year, the former Texas Tech head coach. Matt's been around, experienced guy. Both you guys are going Iowa State?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go K-State.
Yeah,
mostly because everybody can't go Iowa State here. Iowa State, I had a long-held belief, really until last year, if the game was close, they were going to lose. They had an abysmal record in one-possession games. They lost 13 of 16 before last year, but last year, 5-1. And if you are a loyal listener to this podcast, when we talk about the Big 12, what does it mean, kids, when you win close games in the Big 12? It means you play for the championship. 5-1, one-score games last year, went to the championship game. This is going to be one of those close games again, I believe. And despite the fact that K-State is rebuilding that offensive line, had to basically cut spring practice in half in terms of the hitting and so forth because of injuries. I'm gonna go with Avery Johnson. The ability to run the ball, and I say it'll come down to a field goal, just like it did last year in Ireland. Georgia Tech knocked off Florida State, and hopefully whoever comes up on the short end won't fall into a death spiral the way Florida State did after the loss to Georgia Tech last year. Okay, so we're looking forward to that on week 0, and we'll have a preview show for a couple of hours. It'll preview the season. By the way, on that show Saturday morning, reigning Big 12 champions will join us. Kenny Dillingham and Sam Levitt will be on the show live on Saturday morning, and I'm sure they'll be watching with interest once they finish their practice. Notre Dame opens a week from Sunday night against Miami, and when they go out to take the field against the Hurricanes, they'll be led by C.J. Carr. The quarterback decision made by Marcus Freeman and his staff this week. Not really a surprise to people who have been following it. That had been the expectation. However, people close to the program say that was actually a real race. And one of the things that I've been thinking about in these quarterback races is that, a tie goes to the runner, supposedly in baseball, if umpires do their job, which is rare. But tie goes to the runner. Tie always goes in quarterback race to the guy with either the higher projectable ceiling or the guy that people will be clamoring for if the other guy goes 3 and out a couple of times or, heaven forbid, turns the ball over. So that gave C.J. Carr an edge on Kenny Minchey. I would argue that also is what gave Julian Sayin the edge over Lincoln Kienholz. And even though to get into McGee's wheelhouse, even though clearly long-term the right decision was made, in the moment as a freshman. I would even argue that's what gave Peyton Manning the edge over Brandon Stewart. That's just the way it is. If you've got the guy with the big recruiting profile, the bigger name, the one that the fans have been waiting to see, starting the other guy almost puts the other guy in a terrible position, because inevitably, especially if he's a young quarterback, there will be moments when things don't go well. You risk not, coaches aren't making these decisions for fans. I understand that. But they are trying to mitigate noise around their player, whether that's external noise or in some cases internal, because a lot of quarterback battles, and I don't think that's the case at either Notre Dame or Ohio State, who we'll probably talk about in just a second. I'm not implying that's the case there, but it can be in some situations. You can have divided camps. Guy doesn't play well. Heck, I'll go ahead and say this out loud. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't think that, for sure, it looked like to me that receivers quit on a couple of balls. Remember that infamous Alabama USF game a couple of years ago when they benched Jalen Milroe? It didn't look like people wanted Tyler Buckner to be the quarterback. Now when Ty Simpson came in the second half, you didn't see that. Now Tyler Buckner's a good guy, good player back at Notre Dame, probably will contribute to them this year. But my point of bringing all of this up is that coaches go, you got to win the job. Now, look, if Kenny Minchie or Lincoln Keenholz had gone out there and blown the doors off everybody, won the team in the locker room, won the scrimmages, they're playing. I'm not saying that for a second. I'm not saying the fix was in. But if it's close, if there's a tie, then there's a guy that projects a little bit higher, or the guy that will diminish the noise. Then, heaven forbid, if you have to make a change for whatever reason, then everybody's on board with it. Instead of people clamoring for a change internally and externally, instead of people clamoring for it, it's obvious to everyone. So Notre Dame makes this decision. CJ played very well, and there are stories about CJ Carr last year, the wee hours of the night being caught on cameras inside the Notre Dame practice facility in there all by himself, working on footwork, ball handling, all the attention to detail. So he's going to get his shot against Miami to open up. I've ranted pretty well. Do you agree with my assessment, Dan, of how quarterback races often go? Not always, but often go.
Well, give me another famous one. Drew Henson kept Tom Brady from being. That's
right?
Exactly right. That was probably the ultimate one, the local 5-star recruit, and this Tom Brady character. How good can he be? Up. Yeah, I mean, that was the craziest quarterback battle of all time. They would play. One would play one quarter, the first quarter. The other would play the second quarter. Speaking of CJ Carr, this was his grandfather's idea. Mm-hmm. And then at halftime, the coaches would meet and decide who would play the second half. This is like, I think Auburn's trying that this year. We'll get to them, I hope. They may have 3 quarterbacks. They say if you have 2, you don't have any. What happens when you have 3? But absolutely. And in this era, a 5-star guy can transfer really quick. And I find all this, like, these coaches now are way more into, well, we got to let camp play out. We got to wait to the bitter end. Like 5 years ago, it was like, he's our starter. They'd name him at media day. Now it's all, oh my God, it's a secret. Who's going to start? Who's going to start? Right until you can't transfer anymore, or it's going to be much, much tougher. So, but look, usually a 5-star is a 5-star, if only because when throwing against air, when being in practice, like the ball pops off your hand quicker. Like there's things that a 5-star will do that will excite scouts, coaches, all that stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean they end up better, because look, Tom Brady wasn't a 5-star recruit, right? He never had the biggest arm. He never could do well. Yeah, but he could win. And you need him on last drive. He's going to throw it. Patrick Mahomes is not a 5-star recruit at all. So, these things don't really matter in the end, but definitely gives a thing. It'll be very interesting to see how good CJ Carr is. And you step into all these guys. They got a red shirt year. That helps, but there's a lot of first-time quarterbacks. They step into these enormous spotlights. Incredible expectations at Notre Dame right now. Just incredible. Mm-hmm. And this roster is loaded, and there is big momentum, and the idea that all of a sudden Marcus Freeman has developed a little bit of experience as a head coach, and maybe they can avoid the early season letdown. But that playoff run just gave so much credibility to him and shows where he's at. He's going to need to be good really quick, especially when they're playing Miami right off the bat.
Yeah, what's a young quarterback's best friend, right? Or an inexperienced quarterback's best friend is
Run the ball.
Run the ball. And man, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, at wide receiver, Jaden Greathouse suddenly became the greatest wide receiver in the history of football in that national championship game. If you can keep any momentum going at all with those guys, that's your best friend. I was thinking about the quarterback thing. I remember with two instances. I'm talking to you right now from South Charlotte. Chris Leak was one of the greatest high school quarterbacks I ever saw. Independence High School, just up the road from where I'm sitting. Everybody forgets Tim Tebow's first national championship. He was not the starting quarterback. It was Chris Leak. But you talk about noise, and Tebow, they played him just enough to keep everybody happy, but it was super tense. All Chris Leak was doing was winning football games, and everyone wanted him benched because Tebow was a local guy. He obviously is one of the greatest of all time, and the Heisman, all those things. But Tebow, there was a lot, and I'm not the biggest Urban Meyer guy, but I've always given him a lot of credit for how they handled that, throughout that year. And then, I think a lot about on the eve of the Clemson-Alabama national championship game in Tampa. And, so they have media days, and, we're in a basketball arena, and they would let fans come in and sit in the stands and watch media day, which sounds crazy, but God bless them, those are our people. But the Alabama fans cheered Tua Tagovailoa when he walked in as the backup because they thought Jalen Hurts shouldn't be playing. And Jalen Hurts came within one Clemson pick and roll of winning the national championship 2 nights later. But that noise is for real. And anyone that tells you it doesn't affect them, Chris Leak will tell you it affected him. I think Jalen will tell you it affected him. And it's a real thing. So, yeah. But the difference is back in the day, those guys are going to stick around. And Dan's exactly right. Now, you better keep them happy, or at least make them think they have a chance. Otherwise, you'll be playing against them the next year.
Hey, one of the things that Saban says often is that football is the greatest team sport ever invented, except for one position.
Yeah.
And that is a little bit more of an individual sport. Some of it's because of the leadership aspect. Some of it is because only one can play. This is not the old wishbone days where you were running the same plays no matter what, and anybody could run. Not anybody could do it, but I mean, if they were a quarterback on a wishbone team, they all could run the option. They all could run the belly series. They all could carry the ball, and there wasn't a whole lot of difference many times in who was a quarterback. Even I remember Bobby Bowden alternating quarterbacks to great success early in his career at Florida State in the early 80s. So those times have passed by. The one thing I
have an assignment for you, Rece. I have an assignment.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
Can you ask Coach Saban what you brought up that game against South Florida when he benched Jalen Milroe?
Yeah.
One of the most baffling football games I've ever. What was that?
That's the question.
That's it. What was going on? I've never heard a real explanation for why this happened. They almost lost to South. This is Nick Saban. He perfectly coached pretty much every game except when he tried that field goal against Auburn and didn't make it all the way. But other than that, there's a few blips. But for the most, I won't bring that up in polite company. But what was that? What was can you? Because I'm sure Coach Saban, like millions of others, are listening. But if he isn't, just in case he missed this episode of the College Game Day podcast, can you just find out and then report back to us?
Okay. I'll look into
baffled.
that. I have, I don't recall. I don't think I've talked to Nick about it. People around, I think this was one of those, and I'll get this confirmed. I think this was one of those tests of leadership, because remember, Milroe had just taken over. He wasn't established as the leader of the team. I think it was a test of leadership. There's a famous story about A.J. McCarron, who came in red hot, running warm. And Nick, one of the guys who didn't mind running warm at Nick from time to time. And he came in his freshman year mad because he got all of his series in practice with the threes instead of with the twos. And Saban famously told him, this was a test of leadership and you flunked. So I suspect
maybe that was it. Okay.
I suspect, I don't know that
Risky.
for a fact, it's speculation, but I suspect there was something along those lines. And that was also the year I remember Thamo and I doing the podcast, and there was the expectation that Buckner was going to start, and there were some inside the program who thought that Ty Simpson would ultimately win the job on the field, and practice didn't work out that way. Jalen won it, and Jalen went on to, play very, very well, for the most part, and had some tremendous moments for Alabama over the last couple of years. But people thought Simpson might win that job at that time, and didn't work out. And that's another thing with this quarterback race. If you have the credibility, and I don't think anyone in the history of college football has had the credibility that Nick had at that time to do exactly what he wanted with his quarterbacks, and if you question that, you probably ought to do it at a very low whisper. But he had that credibility. If a coach is in a more tenuous situation, then they have to be a little bit more, a little bit careful with how they handle those situations. Notre Dame, though, Notre Dame has the great running game that you mentioned, but they do have some issues in terms of, they only had a couple of offensive line starters returning. Charles Jagusaw, who, he's been star-crossed the last couple of years, missed almost all of the season, and then came back to start the Penn State game in the national championship game, was supposed to start the season at left tackle a year ago, had an ATV accident, broken arm. He's going to miss the start of the season, expected back at some point. So to deal with the new quarterback in CJ Carr and to try to unleash this running game, there are some different faces and different roles on the offensive front. I still think they're going to be really good because they're really deep there. But, I don't think it's inappropriate to question how that's going to look, in the early going until they settle in, when you would imagine that Miami is going to force them to prove that CJ Carr can beat them throwing the football. And they also have a couple of new weapons at wide receiver. I'm even with some questions which are perfectly fair. I'm pretty high on Notre Dame this year. I think Notre Dame's going to be really good. The quarterback will settle in, and I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to win the first two games. I think they're going to beat Miami. I think they'll beat A&M too.
Well, it's the schedule to me. It's the start. I mean, this has all got to come together quick. At Miami, they get Texas A&M at home. They have Purdue at home. They're at Arkansas, which can be tricky, and it's going to be absolutely wild. And then they get Boise State, and NC State's not that bad, and then USC. It eases late, maybe, but it's not going to be easy. So they got to be ready to go.
Yeah, and then Miami to me kind of encapsulates college football this year, because I don't know. I think they could be good, but I don't think they're the 10th best team in the country, which is where they're sitting right now in the preseason poll. So I have at least one giant question about every team in the country. And then there's a lot in the middle. Rece, I can't think of a year that I've gone into where, and maybe this is a byproduct of the transfer portal, but I understand Miami had a great year last year, but the quarterback's pretty good, and we all knew he was good. And so I don't know. I don't know if I'm all in on Miami, but if you're Notre Dame, you beat a team with a top 10 number next to it week one, they're not going to have any questions about that. That's a big win. But Miami to me kind of sums up my feeling about college football just in general this year, which is, I think there's a lot of teams, and I think almost every team, and certainly the top half of the top 25 preseason, they could be really good. In a 12-team playoff, they could be in the postseason. But I also could come up with an argument why they could have a disappointing year. And I put Miami in that, and maybe at the top of that group.
Miami, an experienced guy calling the signals. A lot of teams in the top 25, even in the top 10, are dealing with guys who really haven't played, including Ohio State. What did you think of Texas star pass rusher Colin Simmons putting that posed picture of new Buckeye quarterback Julian Sayin, or at least sharing it on his Instagram story? I guess just making sure that he knows what Julian looks like and his jersey number so that he can wish him well early in the game, and that both of them go.
Yeah. I'm sure Julian loved it. He's a competitor, so he'll be okay. He expected it, but there's always that welcome to college football moment for guys. And be nicer if somebody smaller shared the picture, I would think, if it was me. But I think Julian
would have been nice
right.
if the kicker had done it, right?
Yeah,
That would have been better.
Yeah, maybe a quarterback or something. I'll be. Yeah. But yeah, look, they've got incredible talent at Ohio State, and to come out when you can come out and win the Ohio State quarterback battle, you've done something special. And so Julian Sayin, obviously, highly touted recruit, originally goes to Alabama, transfers to Ohio State after Nick Saban's retirement. But he had to fight off a whole bunch of other guys. So you get forged through iron in Columbus if you're going to be the quarterback or a lot of positions. And so this is a very talented roster, and we're going to see how good if he's as good as the expectations. It's going to be a big year for the Buckeyes. But we'll see week one again, thrown right into that fire.
I'm going to rely on your SEC network expertise here, Ryan. One of the most underrated opening weekend games is on Friday night prior to week one. Auburn and Baylor. Baylor set at quarterback. I'm pretty high on Baylor. Although I think Dan and I talked about this earlier, I was given pause by the whole Wolf of Wall Street answer from Dave Aranda. What are we doing?
Right, yeah.
But so that did make me wonder that perhaps maybe I'd gotten a little sweet on them early, but I digress. This is more about Auburn. Hugh Freeze asked, they go out, they get Jackson Arnold, who was a highly touted quarterback in his own right, got a little sideways at Oklahoma. Now he's at Auburn. They have Deuce Knight, who's a really highly touted guy. Yet Freeze, as a freshman, Freeze said, "Oh, we might play three quarterbacks." What you think he was? You think he was saying, "Well, in an emergency, sure we might. Anything might happen." Or do you think Auburn has a quarterback issue?
I believe him when he said that, because I think they do. I don't think they're set. Hugh Freeze fascinates me for a lot of different reasons. And I said this when he was hired. I said he's going to win some games. He's going to win some big games. But one day it will end, and it will end spectacularly. We just don't know how that's going to happen. I'm having a hard time believing he even really enjoys that job. And so when he says things like that, I believe him. I think he's a little too open and honest with everybody right now. We had a moment with him when we did our Marty McGee talking season specials. This didn't make the show, but I was opening a question. I go, Coach, I came up and visited with you during your first, August practices at Liberty. And he proceeded for the next 5 minutes to talk about how much he loved Liberty. And there's a lot of days he wakes up and he misses Liberty Mountain. And I honestly went, Coach, we're rolling right now. So he's a fascinating guy to me, because I think they might win 6 games. I'm not in on them at all. I think they're going to lose to Baylor opening weekend. And I'm not saying that he can't get it together and that they can't start winning football games again. But the fun, swashbuckling Hugh Freeze, I don't know if we're ever going to see him again, because he looks miserable, and I need someone to convince me that he's not, because it just doesn't look. He doesn't like the trademark of him for me, at least, and you guys tell me. I mean, y'all were there for the famous Katy Perry weekend and all that. He looked to me like he always like he was having fun, and he doesn't look like that at all anymore. He looks like his underwear is 5 sizes too small all the time, right? And so to me, he's the story, because I don't
enjoy that, Ryan.
Yeah, yeah. We all been there, right? Your mom ran the laundry too hot. But it's just, but I don't know. He's a fascinating. To me, he's one of the most fascinating characters in college football, because he's so honest, and that's great as a writer. But I think we might know too much.
Well, okay. First off, I think all of this is a genius plan, because I want Coach Freeze to invite me to the Morris Mill Country Club that he belongs to and played golf at all of June, much to the entertainment of Lane Kiffin. But it's not just 3 quarterbacks, okay? So if you break this down, he's got Jackson Arnold's coming in from Oklahoma. He's got Ashton Daniels coming in from Stanford. And then he's got Deuce Knight, the big recruit that he flipped from Notre Dame. So he's got 3 quarterbacks. He's saying they'll all play. They also have 3 play callers.
That's
Derek
right.
Nix
Right.
is making the calls on first down. He's good at first down calls. Kent Austin is good at third down calls, apparently. That's his specialty. This is like Moneyball, like relief pitchers, right? Like they're bringing a guy in to throw one slider. I don't know. And then Freeze is apparently in charge of second down and maybe fourth down, if we're going that route and it's not a punt, or he can overrule anything. So we have 3 quarterbacks, 3 play callers. That's like 3, that's 9. We got 9. Like it starts becoming some real dynamics here. I don't know what's going to happen at Auburn, but it's going to be entertaining. This is either going to be spectacular or a total failure.
That's it. And I love Jackson Arnold. To sit and talk with him, I love talking to that kid, and I'm excited that one of the things I do like about the transfer portal is it is a chance to hit a reset button, and a guy like him needs to hit a reset button. But I don't know that this is what he wanted to walk into. Who's talking now? Is this second down guy, third down guy, fourth down guy? Did coach just step in? Like what? That to me is feels very complicated.
I've seen high school teams with like you have the passing quarterback and the running quarterback. You don't have to be Connor Stallions to know what's coming, right? But three play callers. How are you only good at first down
with veto power?
With veto,
with stated ahead of time veto power,
and that to me is the most important aspect of this, because you know what it tells me? It tells me who's calling the plays,
right?
Basically, it tells me that Hugh's basically calling the plays, but so that he can administer the game, that maybe Derek and Kent have to actually put them into the headset verbally, something like that. But that Hugh's calling the plays. That's what I think anyway. Because if it's not that, then it's not going to be this way for long, because that's going to be disastrous. And Hugh knows that. I think Hugh.
If that's the way he's doing it, then why not just say I'm calling the plays? Everyone would be like, okay.
I don't know.
So just I'm bad at math, right? That's why I became a sports writer, not an astronaut. So 3 quarterbacks, 4 guys calling plays. That's the most Auburn sentence that's ever been. It is. I love it. That's why I love being there. That's why I love going there. Is the one thing they do better than football is drama, and it's and this just adds to that.
This is going to be who's on first. It's like Ashton. No, 100%. This is Deuce. Wait, is this Kent? No,
6 guys on the sideline doing 6 different signals. Yeah, and they're all actually the play. Yeah,
I was watching the Netflix special earlier this week, and the episode with Auburn winning over Texas A&M came on, and our friend Andy Staples put it pretty well. He said, at Auburn, when it's good, it is really, really good. And when it's not, it is really, really bad. Paraphrasing a little bit, but it when it flames out there, it flames out spectacularly. But when it's good, prayer at Jordan Hare, kick 6, playing for the national championship, trying to stop Jameis right at the end. It's huge. When it's going well. So we'll see how it goes for the Tigers starting with the game against the Bears. Guys, before we wrap up, I don't think we had a chance to talk about the Michigan sanctions. Dan brought up his one of his favorite subjects, Connor Stallions.
Content Stallions.
Yeah. So the Connor Stallions situation has been adjudicated for the most part, pending various appeals and so forth. And this is something that I've been calling for years. And I thought the only real deterrent to these types of things were significant financial penalties. Now, I've seen a number of people say, a $30 million, so what, endowment, rich boosters, billionaire boosters that, flip quarterbacks from LSU, so what, they'll just pay it. It's really easy to spend other people's money. Right. I think this is a real penalty for Michigan financially. It's a significant one. If it's a one-off, maybe people are right. I'm still of the opinion that this is the future of punishment in college sports. I'm going to get a chance to maybe look into that a little bit more with some of the people involved in this over the coming weeks and days. But I like this much better than the silly bowl bans, ridiculous taking down of banners, which we've all seen. We watched the games. We know who won the game. And I wasn't terribly surprised that they went this way with Michigan. And I think I was a little surprised that they were so adamant about having the goods on Michigan, although it also still seemed like a little old school NCAA enforcement. It's not so much what you did, it's whether you properly groveled when we confronted you with our version of the facts. What did you think of the penalties, Dan, and the way they were announced and enforced?
Yeah, I agree with most of that. It was a lot of process crimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you deleted the text messages, but then we found them anyway, or whatever. I mean, other than the throwing the phone in the pond, I
Which
mean
is
that
great.
that was really the highlight of the entire thing. There's already the Ohio State scuba team has descended on all of the lakes surrounding Ann Arbor. They're searching for this phone. I think I'm just saying, there's a lot of lakes in Michigan. This is the problem. This would be a lot better if this is Arizona or something. Like, you're going to be a lot of lakes to look for this Connor Stallion's phone. So I have kind of a nuanced position on it. I always thought this was overheated. I didn't really think there was that much of an advantage gained by what Connor Stallions was doing, because they all steal the phone, all steal the signs. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like the Astros where you have one team, clanking hitting the garbage can. This is so ingrained in the sport. You have four guys dressed in ridiculous outfits doing, all these crazy signals, and they're holding up these boards. Everyone steals the sign. He just stole a little bit extra. He was a little over the top on it. So I thought it's a huge scandal. They should be punished. Absolutely. Connor Stallions broke the rules, but I never thought that this is like Michigan cheated. The only reason they won was because this guy was
Agreed.
stealing the final couple things.
Amen. Yeah.
That's to me it wasn't that big of an advantage because they all steal the signs in other ways. Now, Michigan fan will cheer me on that. This is where they probably would not. These penalties are, I thought, ridiculous. First off, also, Jim Harbaugh should stand up and talk. Jim Harbaugh is Mr. Michigan man. He spent his whole career talking about Michigan man. Other than Shem Beckler, he's probably the most significant figure in the program's history. I mean, he played there, he grew up there, his dad coached there, he coached there. And for him to not, I know it's an unfair process, or it's not going to do any good, or I'm at the Chargers. You can't just skip town. You should stand up, go to the hearing, defend your program, come out now and talk about, look, this is what happened. This is what I knew. That whole bit, I thought that's a bad look for Jim Harbaugh. These penalties, though, yeah, the fine is significant. This is all they've got. I mean, if they weren't going to postseason ban this team for an on-field scandal, then they're never, ever going to do it. I mean, they literally said we should ban this team from the postseason, but then our other parts say, don't do that. We're not doing that. So they're at odds with themselves. And I mean, the idea that the fine is good, but the idea that Sharon Moore gets to pick which games he's suspended, like, what is this? Like, he gets to pick games 3 and 4 because he really wants to coach Oklahoma against Oklahoma, his alma mater. Like, what are we doing? Niceties? Did you break the rule or not? So you either come in and say, Sharon Moore's got to sit for 3 games and it's 1, 2, 3. You did this. Or you say, look, he deleted it, but he didn't really delete it because we got it. Like, what's the word delete mean? It's not that big of a deal. So I thought the punishment to Moore really showed how, more than anything, how weak and just toothless the NCAA is, that they're sitting there saying, you pick your game. You broke these rules. We're going to write really mean things about you in this finding. But you choose your punishment. You don't tell the kid which night of the weekend you want to be grounded for.
Mhm. The difference is he won't be able to coach during the week, which is different from some of the previous suspensions that they've endured
More
at Michigan.
significant than Harbaugh's previously, yeah.
Right. So, and I wonder if, in mitigating this punishment, if, saying it had to be served 1, 2, 3, that it took him out of the mix more than they intended. But I think the primary factor was exactly what you said is, Michigan, Oklahoma. I like Sharon personally. It doesn't have anything to do with what the punishment should be, just because I happen to like someone. But, I am glad on a personal level that he's getting to do that, to coach against Oklahoma. That'll be meaningful to him. He, had a good career there and was, was a team leader, despite the fact that he wasn't always on the front lines as a star, as an offensive lineman. But, I'm glad for that. But I tend to agree with you. The other one I didn't understand is, okay, we're going to also make him do it in 2026, with the first game. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with one of two things. If you felt like it was too punitive to do it in the early season because they're developing the team, and that was a little bit farther than you wanted to go. Then say it's 3-4-5 or 2-3-4 or whatever, but get it over with, get it done. If you didn't, then I would agree with you. Go ahead and do it at the beginning, and that's it, regardless of where he might have played or his desire to coach in a particular game. But I can find no reason to extend it to the following year except for an attempt to continue to keep this punishment in the spotlight, which might well have been their intention. To say, okay, we're going to remind you one more time that you broke the rules. And I said this on game day the morning of. Dan, I agree with everything you said. If you don't look, if somebody's stealing your signs, get better signs. However they got them. But this is specifically against the rules. It was against the integrity of the game. It's the wrong thing to do. You cheated. You deserve to be punished. Did that cheating mean that you would not have won otherwise? Absolutely not. Michigan was the best team in the country that year. They were going to win with or without the Connor Stallion signs. They were the best team. Did it give them an advantage at times? I'm sure it did, at least until teams figured it out. But old Sonny Dykes and the fellows figured it out and did a little tomfoolery and tricked them a few times. So, there are no secrets in football. People knew that Michigan had a way to get signs. Just like, and nobody's accusing Clemson of anything nefarious in doing it. They did it the way you're talking about, or do it when Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator. Everybody believed Clemson stole signs legally, not illegally. I want to point that out, that they had a great method of watching your film, of watching you during games, and they could figure out what was coming. Used it to their advantage. Get better signs. You don't like it, get better signs. And, so I don't think that was the reason Michigan won it all, but I do believe it's right there in the rule book. And just because you don't like a rule doesn't mean that you get to say, it probably won't give us that much of an advantage. We're going to do it anyway. So they deserve the punishment. They deserve the punishment for it for sure.
Well, and $30 million is a lot of money. To your point earlier, Rece, it's funny how people just automatically, I looked at their endowment. That endowment has nothing to do with what happens in the athletic department. Yeah. The athletic department primarily is an independently run organization. And we're living in an age where Kansas gets a $300 million, football donation. I get all that. But it's still, those schools at that level, roughly about a $200 million annual athletic budget. It's 15% of your budget if you apply that to 1 year. It's a lot of money. I don't care. You still have to account for it, right? No matter where it comes from, you still have to do that. But the other thing, too, is the thumbing of the nose was a bad look for everyone on this. And to Dan's point, Harbaugh, at some point, I think it would have gone a long ways if there was hey, this is what we're looking into. This is what may or might have happened. We're going to do whatever we can to help with the investigation, whatever. If you're lying, fine, but at least attempt to play along. The biggest thing for me on this is, this is probably the last great NCAA infraction ruling we're going to have, right? Because now we're moving into this new, committee, outsource, whatever.
College
and
the
other thing is, I hope we never hear from Connor Stallions ever again, because my problem with Connor Stallions is, and we're talking about Netflix documentaries. My friend Micah Brown, great Kansas football player, directed that thing. We've talked about this. I could have used one apology. If you're such a Michigan man, and your parents are showing me videos of you on Halloween dressed like Bo Schembechler or wherever else, but if you love it so much and all this stuff, again, it's the going to the games and tweeting, hey, look, I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm here. And then doing a 1 hour documentary that basically the whole focus was just for you to tell us what a genius you are. The good news is we never get to hear from that guy again. So go be an analyst for the Jets, do whatever it is that you want to do. But I just assume we never have to hear from him ever again, because if you really love the place as much as you say you do, and you really love the program as much as you say you do, and you really love the fact that you have this ring now and all these things, maybe one, even if it's fake, maybe just one apology. Sorry I created this headache for everybody. Sorry I constructed this asterisk for everybody, instead of spending my time trying to tell me all the time what a genius you are and that I should be impressed with what you did, because I'm not. Because the reality is, congratulations on your spreadsheets. But everybody, like you say, other people are doing this too. They're just not bragging to us about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is an extensive thing that all these schools are doing. That's just always been my thing. Connor went over the top in his pursuit, which is kind of what he is. But I agree. He could discuss that or whatever. If I was an NFL team, I would jump at hiring Connor Stallions, though, because the real skill is the cat and mouse game. How quickly you can pick it up, how quickly you can, you can watch them steal the signs in real time. Anytime a team runs, it's usually the offense trying to get the defense to call their play soon. How many times have you seen an offense run up to the line of scrimmage? Everybody looks over to the right and they read whatever the sign is. It's like, a SpongeBob SquarePants or whatever, and a Nike symbol, and and then the defense makes a move, and they're panicked, they're yelling cover 2 or something, and they move, and then the ball doesn't get snapped, and then the offense looks over. They've got the defense right where they want. You can watch them steal the signs and use the signs in every single game you watch in college football. It wouldn't be this elaborate of a protection and all the different things they do if it wasn't anywhere. That was my biggest thing with this. I thought this was a misdemeanor, not a felony, but I thought it was handled in poor ways by all sorts of people. And I agree with some of Ryan's points there.
I would also like to take this opportunity to promote the 2040 first college football season edition of the Ryan McGee, Marty Smith podcast, where new Michigan head coach Connor Stallions will be the guest. They'll go over his manifesto, and Ryan will
talking season. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Ryan
When that's when Harbaugh gets out of his show cause too, I think.
Yeah, no, that's I can't imagine if you really love your school as much as you say that you do. If you really love UMass, if you really love Bama, if you really love Tennessee, I just can't imagine creating like this perpetual pain in the butt. And then, never even, not even apologizing to like one player about it. That part of it is just that's kind of all I need to know about the guy.
Guys, this has been fun. Looking ahead to actual games on the field, the closing of the era of the NCAA sanctions, at least enforcement aspect before the new one with Michigan and the Ballyhoo case, and the Wolverines will be on the field, putting all of this behind them in short order. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast. Download this wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe, and you will never miss an episode.